Hi everybody, welcome to our Equal Access Facebook Live today, and I would like to welcome Kate Sheehan. Hi Kate, thanks for joining
Hi,
us.
Bridget.
Now, our focus today we're going to be talking about is your divorce and positive legal perspective. So you are a lawyer who works in the family law space. Tell us more about what you do.
Well, basically, I try and help people reach a resolution primarily in terms of relationship property issues by agreement. I also do children, but only by agreement between the parties as to some kind of care and custody, care and access arrangement. So basically, I help try and people facilitate a resolution that works for both parties initially. If parties are not able to reach agreement, obviously, then I'll represent them in court.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about relationship property agreements from your perspective.
So relationship property agreements, generally most parties want to reach some kind of amicable resolution, but in relation to relationship property cases, everyone needs to get their own independent lawyer. So each party needs independent legal advice on their position. And in terms of agreements, what can happen is both parties can agree on what they want to have happen and then send the respective agreements to the lawyers who then facilitate the agreement or resolution effectively, or the settlement. In terms of the agreements, one of the key aspects to it, which Bridget's going to also mention or discuss, is financial disclosure, because financial disclosure is the key to the whole agreement or process, really.
Oh, absolutely. In terms of when things break down between a couple who are divorcing and separating, it's either the money and or the children. So that absolutely needs to be the focus. And everyone needs to know, both parties need to know what you own and what you owe. It's very important that everyone is aware, even if they're not going to get divorced, they need to know what are our shared marital assets. So let's talk about financial disclosure. Now, you don't, if you can avoid it, you want to avoid having to go to court and get discovery, don't you, Kate?
Yes, if you can possibly avoid it, and if both parties will agree to provide the information, it's better to do it that way so that you can facilitate agreement, because going to court costs money and it's expensive, and that's part of the problem with relationship property. It's always better to disclose information. If you can't, or if the other party will not disclose it, then you're left with no option but to apply for discovery for disclosure of the information. But that's like an interlocutory application, and you've got to pay a filing fee, and it costs money in terms of drafting the applications to the court.
I mean, on average, would you say it costs between about $10,000 to $30,000 for discovery?
On average, I mean, that's for the interim or interlocutory kind of stage, because there's two stages, just so people understand. There's the interim stage or the interlocutory stage, and then there's the substantive application stage. So there's kind of two parts to it. But you can't, the problem with these applications is that if you don't have all the financial information, you don't know what you're splitting or what you're agreeing to.
That's right. And absolutely. Absolutely. It is. And no family lawyer is going to sign off on a settlement agreement if there hasn't been full and final disclosure.
That's right. It's well, some people will, but I wouldn't recommend it, because you never know if one party's hiding assets or if they're hiding money. And one of the more interesting issues that's come up recently is Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and people who owns that and whose money it is, really. And people can hide money through that kind of process, because once the money's gone, it's gone effectively in crypto world. So that's become a new issue in terms of financial disclosure. But I have seen cases where that is being disclosed as part of the assets and liabilities of the respective parties. Yeah.
And people have got to think about things outside the square that they don't realise that are relationship property, such as air points. From your perspective, Kate, what other things do people need to be aware of that aren't your standard, what you own and what you owe?
Well, one of the key ones really is KiwiSaver and superannuation funds. that people don't realise that it's not just yours, it's actually yours and your partner's. So if you've got less money in your KiwiSaver and they've got more, then you need to come to some kind of division of to make it an equal division. So a lot of people don't realise that that's actually relationship property. The other thing that is relationship property is pets. A lot of people will fight over their pets just like they'll fight over children.
And vases, yeah.
Right, and then your contents, right? All of your stuff that's inside your house. So all of that is also technically relationship property. There are exceptions, like gifts is an exception. So one of the main areas of dispute sometimes is engagement rings or jewelry. But if it's been given to you as a gift, technically it doesn't actually form relationship property, it's separate property. But there are circumstances where it could be considered to be relationship property. So that's also one area that people will fight over is their jewelry because of the sentimental value, really, rather than the monetary value.
So let's talk about litigation funding. Why do people need funding when they're going through divorce and separation from your perspective?
Well, divorce is expensive. I mean, no one's going to say it's going to be a cheap process because it's just not really. The cheapest way to do it is by agreement. I mean, if you can agree to settle matters between you, that's the cheapest and easiest way. You still got to pay a lawyer to get the agreement signed off, but once it's signed off, that's the end of the relationship and the end of the settlement and any money owing to that party. So funding generally, I mean, if you're going to go to court, you need to be able to fund the legal fees, but you also need to be able to try and think overall what kind of settlement that you want to get out of the deal. Like, what is it that you want versus what does that party want, and how much is it going to cost you? Because you could just burn a whole lot of money in legal fees and then not get what you want, and that's not really helping anyone in terms of achieving a resolution or a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I'm very encouraged because a lot of couples that I work with are wanting to be amicable and work it out through informal mediation with myself, obviously being educated and informed in the first instance with lawyers and then getting the independent lawyers to sign off on the settlement agreements, because I think that it's not until you go through divorce and separation that you realise how stressful it is. The costs can be massive. If court's thrown in there as well, if proceedings are filed, and it could take you, a year, 18 months to get to court?
Oh, yeah. The problem with the courts at the moment is there's a bit of a backlog of cases, and so it is actually taking quite a long time to get to your case effectively, and also to get through the interim and then the substantive stages. So it's not a quick process in terms of a resolution process, really. The resolution really has to come from the parties or an external mediator or a third party to try and sort it out quickly. And it's really important for people to do that, especially with financial commitments like properties and loans and things like that, and liabilities. So I mean, the quicker the resolution in terms of a divorce or settlement, from my point of view, for people, the better, I think. Some lawyers don't agree with me, but I think that it is better for the parties, maybe not necessarily the lawyers, but it is actually, the key is to try and resolve the dispute and allow both parties to move on, because being tied up in litigation doesn't really allow the parties to move on.
No. And, my own case, I took 5 years for my case to settle. And, I think that the emotional toll is just huge. You constantly feel like you've got this cloud hanging over your head. So if you can both be amicable in terms of the divorce, that is the way to go. I think that if you both come out of the divorce with your settlement agreement signed and you're slightly unhappy about it, then that's a really great deal for both of you. You're never going to get 100% of what you want.
Well, This is the thing, you're going to have to concede somewhere along the way, but if you don't concede, you're looking at higher costs at the end, so you might not half of what you got, so you kind of got to look at it I kind of look at it as a crystal ball or a overall approach, because relationships don't just exist in legal terms, they exist in terms of people, relationships, kids, like all kinds of things. So, and your health in particular, your health is one big aspect as well. So divorce definitely does affect in your health. In some cases, I've seen some quite bad cases. So you want to make sure that you come out of it and can move on in life. I mean, that I know it's really difficult when you're going through it, but that should really be the end goal, is to try and reach some kind of solution or resolution that allows you to do that.
Yeah, and I say to my clients, I want you to think about you and your life and having no regrets. So, 6 months down the track, how have you acted through this process? What are you going to feel about how you've acted in 2 years' time, 5 years' time? You really want to act in the best interest of the both of you and your children and wider family. And it can be really difficult to manage your emotions, but you don't want to make the process any harder than it needs to be.
Well, I think that's true, and it also doesn't need to be really expensive either. I mean, people do sometimes balk at an agreement fee, but I said, well, that's nothing compared to court fees, So, like, in terms of agreement, like, even if you have to pay a lawyer $3,000 or something to sort it, at least it's been resolved and sorted, and you can move forward with a solution that works for both people. If you're stuck in the acrimonious stuff and this slinging, it never gets better, or you don't reach a resolution.
No, absolutely not. As I tell my clients, it's time to get been stuck in your story and move to the business of divorce.
Yes, and unfortunately, it is sometimes more detrimental towards women, I have to say, like in terms of the financial aspects to it, and that's why I think what Bridget's doing is a really good thing, that you can try and get your finances sorted, because that's part of the whole process, is the financial stuff. And a lot of people haven't actually had the experience of dealing with their own financial commitments.
No, absolutely. So that's why, I see a lot of particularly women in my business who have no financial literacy, no idea about their finances. So in conjunction with a financial advising company, we've developed a financial capability program for people. You don't have to be divorced to do it, and just ensuring that what you own and what you owe, and that'll be launched in the next few weeks, because there's just such a huge
I'll be referring people to your program.
Oh, thank you. We've had a lot of interest already. People on a waiting list who want to do it as soon as it's launched. So Kate, what is, looking at divorce positively, what are some of the tips that you would like to leave our viewers with?
Well, I think divorce doesn't have to be an awful process. Like, if you think of it from a positive process, you might actually come out better off in some cases. Like, I've seen people come out way better off than what they were to begin with. It also means you can cut some liabilities of the other person. If the other person's got a business or massive liabilities and you get divorced, then you can cut ties with that person. And being divorced doesn't mean that you have to not have anything to do with the person. Perhaps you'll be friends down the line if you do it by agreement. If you end up in a other court situation, you're probably not likely to be amicable with that person later down the line. So it's also good for people's health, because I think there's mental health, emotional health, physical health as well. Like relationships do take a toll. Like, life is not perfect, doesn't exist in a clean line. And I think that the more positive approach you can take to it, the better that you come out of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. This absolutely is why this business exists, because I wanted people to have a better and a more positive outcomes, and looking at it a different way, separating with dignity. It can be done. You just need.
It can be done almost happily. Like, some people are quite happy with the outcome. Sometimes the relationship hasn't worked for one reason or the other. Sometimes it's no one's fault. It's just what's happened, and people just need a resolution to move forward in life.
That's right. So, Kate, thank you. That's been wonderful this morning, talking to you. It's certainly some gems of information there for everybody. Where can people find you?
So people can find me at my email is kate@katesheehan.co.nz, I also have a website, www.katesheehan.co.nz. And on my online site, I'm trying to do some fixed fee agreements for people by agreement. So there'll be a fixed price. So you're not going to get any surprises. So you know what you're up for. And my phone number is 027 5477123. So yeah, I'm online. You can find me LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere, just like Bridget.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone's got any questions, if you want to email Kate, or you can email me and I can pass it on, because Kate's one of our expert advisors and doing a wonderful job with clients. Very happy with what Kate's doing for them. But certainly I think if anyone's got any area that they want to know more about, we would certainly be happy to talk about it in another Facebook Live in the next few weeks. So do let us know, because we're here to absolutely inform you and educate you in terms of your legal rights. We want you to be amicable. We want this process for you to be as positive as it can be, with it being at the top of the stress continuum. And absolutely, we don't want you to have any regrets moving forward, particularly if you've got children involved.
That's right.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Kate, and we'll look forward to chatting to you all again soon. Bye now.
Thanks, Bridget. Thanks.
Pleasure. Bye.